go. Yeah, hello. So in this video, I'll be talking about just three major problems and a way that these problems could be a way to navigate around these problems, at least to some extent. Um, uh, and all of this is specific to southwestern Nigeria, because yeah. So the first problem is sanitation. The second problem is environmental sustainability. And the third problem is like it has to do with like socioeconomic problems, like undesirable socioeconomic situations. All right, so good. Sanitation. So like Nigeria, or like Lagos, southwestern Nigeria, if I'm being more specific with regard to like what parts of the country I have personal experience with, um, uh, it gets kind of dirty. Like most of the place is like littered with like plastic bottles and stuff, and all of this is it becomes more evident to you when you like travel outside the country and like live in other places and then you visit Nigeria and you're like, wow, this place is so dirty. I wasn't aware of all of this before. So the specific aspect of the sanitation problem that this video is going to be focusing on has to do with plastics. Like a lot of places in southwestern Nigeria are littered with plastics, like plastic bottles and just a lot of plastic stuff, like that people have used. You like used plastic waste really, and it's like it's so like ingrained in the mindset. It's been like completely normalized. Like you buy a bottle of soft drink, you drink the contents, and you just throw the bottle outside, like out on the road on the floor, and like no one really thinks about it. It's just strange how normalized it is. Like it's normal. It's normal. Like so, someone's in a car and then like they're done with their drink and then they just threw the plastic bottle out of the window of the car, like while the car is moving on the road, and it's normal. There's nothing strange about it. As I said, all of this stuff becomes more shocking to you when you like live in like another country, like most times like a more developed country, and then you visit Nigeria and you're like, wow, how is all of this normal? This is strange, this is absurd. So yeah, so that's this sanitation. Now environmental sustainability with regard to these plastics. So these plastics are not biodegradable. And I believe like the issue with like biodegradable waste has to do with like just time. Like everywhere can be really messy if you have biodegradable waste around, but like I think over time it just pretty much disappears into the environment. But plastics are not like that. They just stay wherever it is you put them. They don't go anywhere. So that's one issue. There's just that these plastic bottles like from like years and possibly decades ago just still hanging around like on the ground and in like landfills. So the government, one of the major ways the government in Nigeria, at least in southwestern Nigeria, if I'm being more specific, just to be fair, that like I don't want to accuse people I don't whose activities I'm not so familiar with. So we've got a lot of these plastic bottles in like giant mountains, like giant landfill mountains, which eventually are burnt. I mean, not all, some are like buried and stuff, but like some, they get burnt and all of that. So all of these are like environmental sustainability problems. Like I can imagine like people who are really passionate about all of that, like wincing when you think about like mountains of plastic and like mountains of plastic being burnt. Like there are all of these environmental sustainability issues, there are climate change issues, all of that. So this is the second category of problem that we were considering here. And the third category is socioeconomic problems. Now, I just say this like in a very straightforward way. Like people do not have enough. A lot of people in this environment do not have enough money to access basic like necessities of life. So I'll just say not enough money for essential life necessities. All right. So I don't know, essential and necessity, is that tautological? I don't know, but okay, good. Now let's walk through how we intend to like circumnavigate this space. Good. So we'll start here. Environmental sustainability. So as at 2015, which from just looking through the internet, it seems was the last time there was like comprehensive data on plastic waste management on an international scale. Of course, if anyone has evidence otherwise, I'd love to. I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear of like new data. But as of 2015, I got access to a data set that pretty much ranked countries in the world based on how well they were managing plastic waste, and Nigeria was ranked 158 out of 191 countries. So that's like that means they're in the bottom 20%. As at 2015, I don't know what the current state of things is right now. It'll be interesting to learn about that. So now we've talked about problems, an array of issues that that we tend to address. Now let's just begin. Let's begin to move now. So the essential idea in this video involves using recycling to structure a solution to a combination of these problems. How? Okay, let's just walk with the more straight for the approach a lot of people are familiar with. So you've got plastic bottles, which are non-biodegradable, just hanging out in the environment, constituting this category of problems, and of course littering everywhere, constituting this category of problem also. People are generally familiar with the idea of recycling plastics. You just get the plastics, use them for other purposes. But there's this there's this really interesting trend now that involves the concept of incentivized recycling. So people are giving financial incentives to recycle. What the hell is wrong with this marker? Incentivized recycling. People are being given financial incentives to recycle. We're talking about plastics specifically. So the idea that people could be given financial incentives to return plastic bottles for recycling, and of course, if they're given money, it means this ends up having an effect, a positive effect on their socioeconomic situation. People who do not have enough money for essential life necessities could get some money at least by returning plastic bottles for recycling. Now, it's a very sensible idea, very sensible approach. The issue with it, especially in this environment, is that it doesn't pay very much. In fact, it pays very little. And the only people, or at least the only people I know who really engage in these activities, are people who migrate from the northern part of the country, which is pretty much like fraught with like insecurity. There are a lot of like kidnappings. There's a lot of terrorism in the northern part of the country, and like so there's this pretty considerable stream of people leaving the northern part of the country and like moving down to the south, down to the southwest, which is where like the economic Lagos State, one of the economic centers of the major economic center of the country is. So you've got these people from the north who don't really have any serious like source of income, and I mean like this is Nigeria. It's not like some more developed countries where you've got like this universal basic income and stuff like that. The idea is pretty ridiculous here right now, just thinking about it, just given the state of like just the state of things. So you've got these people who have like no source of income and no skills, no serious skills, or at least do not seem to be demonstrating any serious skills that could lead to like considerable financial like inflow for them. And then they pretty much sort through like trash and like pick bottles, and then like go turn in these bottles for recycling, and then they get some like change to at least, you know, live and like be alive and not die of hunger or stuff. So that's the current state of things. That's the current state of like recycling. Yeah. It doesn't pay very much, and so not that many people do it. Not that many people think about it. A lot of people, like, people here are primarily motivated by like money, and so like if something does not look like it provides like much money, people are not really going to pay attention to it. It's just, yeah, there's that. So how do we intend to like just go around this? Recently I began to consider the possibility of exporting plastic waste from Nigeria. I mean, it sounded absurd to me initially. I just, okay, this is a possibility, but it doesn't sound very realistic. And export like waste, it's not like you're exporting oil, which is like inherently valuable, consensually agreed to be valuable, consensually recognized as being very, very valuable, you know, for all of these machines that require like fossil fuel stuff. So yeah. So like, how do we export? Like how does it make sense to export plastics? I'll start here. If it's possible to figure this out, one strong advantage is going to have over local incentivized recycling is that it's going to pay more. And so the resulting impact on socioeconomic situation of people is going to be way more than what local recycling is doing. Now, why is that? One key notion is the exchange rate. The naira currently stands at about 411 units of the Nigerian naira to 1 unit of the US dollar, which is like, I think, the lowest ever. It has never been this low. That's what's usually always happening. It descends to a new low, and everybody's like, "Oh, it has never been this bad." The only God knows what's going to happen next. So that's like on the official market. Like in the parallel market, I think that's a synonym for black market. It goes for up to like 480 units of the Nigerian naira for 1 unit of the US dollar. Now, what does all of this mean with regard to all of this that we've been talking about? Let's do it this way. If you intend to turn in plastic bottles for recycling here in Nigeria, you get about 30 naira, about 30 units of the Nigerian naira for 100 bottles. In the UK, from the number of articles I was reading, you could get paid about 5 pence or 10 pence in some places for turning in 1 bottle. In Europe, in Germany specifically, and also from my personal experience in Berlin a number of years back, you could get 25 cents, 25 euro cents for turning in 1 plastic bottle at a reverse vending machine. It's this machine that takes in bottles and gives you like either money or like coupons. So I'm going to work with the lowest number just to minimize the risk of disappointment. Let's work with 5 pence. 5 pence, like, for 1 bottle. Doing like the arithmetic, converting all of that to naira means you'd get about 25 units of the Nigerian naira for turning in 1 bottle. So if you're recycling locally, you're getting 30 naira for turning in 100 bottles. If somehow you figure out a way to export these bottles, you'll be getting about 25 naira per bottle. You know, presuming that it's also you've also figured out a way to get these people who recycle plastics in, say, Europe or the UK or just elsewhere to accept these bottles from you. So it means you're getting about 120 times more for the same plastics. So like you're getting about 120 times more for the same plastics. And all of this is as a result of the exchange rate between the naira and other currencies. The naira has recently devalued, and like just the exchange rate is just becoming like more and more like it's ridiculous, but like I mean it's just what it is, and whatever kind of news it is, and like you're the one who decide on like what to do with that news, what that piece of information. And here could actually be something positive. So the issue is if you're going to get 120 times more money from, you know, exporting plastic waste, you know, in contrast to recycling them locally, then could this gain or could this increase in like, you know, financial returns cover for the logistics of exportation? I mean, like, the primary reason why exporting plastic waste felt absurd to me at the time was like, I mean, it's plastic. How are you going to pay for, you know, the logistics of like transporting the plastics from Nigeria to another country? But it turns out that the exchange rates makes things such that foreign recycling, like exporting plastic waste is provides so much more financial return than local recycling that the cost of like exportation logistics could be subsumed into that financial difference. And I think that's an interesting possibility to think about. I think that's a very interesting possibility to think about. So let's just walk through the entire thing. There's a cleanliness problem, there's sustainability problems, there's socioeconomic problems. You could locally recycle to fix this. You know, you're solving sanitation problems and sustainability problems, and also so people are getting money by cleaning up the environment. But the issue is that it doesn't pay very much. So not that many people are doing it. There's still a lot of litter, and like sustainability goals are still pretty far off. But how about exporting plastic waste? There's a lot more financial inflow because of the exchange rate, the naira to other currencies. Because of the exchange rate, exporting brings in more money for recycling than local recycling. And that difference could actually cover for the logistics involved in exporting that are completely absent if you're recycling locally. So all of this means it could be possible to structure a financially sensible, a financially sustainable endeavor based on exporting plastic waste from Nigeria. And it also means people's lives are kind of improving because they're getting more money and they're helping clean up the environment and achieve sustainability goals, which I think is great. Now everything isn't entirely figured out. There's still a number of things to figure out. For example, in 2019, there was an amendment to something called the Basel Convention. I don't know how it's pronounced. Basel. I think it's in Sweden or Switzerland. It's a European country starting with an S. And so what this amendment implied was it brought about a number of regulations to like the transnational movement of I don't know what the difference between transnational and international is, if I'm being honest. The international movement of like hazardous waste, and this had an implication on like plastic waste. It imposes like regulations on what sort. I believe it does. It imposes regulations on what sort of plastics could be exported or what essentially what sorts of plastic waste could be moved around internationally. So it means, okay, we've structured this entire plan that like aims to improve people's lives and clean up the environment by exporting plastic waste, but it turns out there could be some legal complications preventing that from being, an actual like an actuality, an actually feasible sort of endeavor. This is one constraint. Another one thing that still has to be figured out, the whole legal part, like international law and all of that stuff. A number of other issues is like the cleanliness of these bottles. Like, are these bottles going to be clean? A lot of these bottles have been like on the road for a long time, and like they're very dirty, and like who's going to wash them, how are you going to clean them, and all of that. Of course, I don't expect that if you eventually figure out a way to export plastic waste, people are going to accept dirty bottles from you. I think that is extremely unlikely. So these bottles are going to be need to be clean. How? Who's going to clean them? How? At what point in this process are they going to get cleaned? Another issue is like composition of these plastics. Some plastics are, I think, a better choice for recycling than others. I don't know how binary it is, if it's just like recyclable versus non-recyclable. But I think to make it more general, like some are just better choices. So like how well are the bottles being used for like soft drinks and stuff in Nigeria? How well are these bottles and the composition of these bottles going to conform with like international conventions? Say it's possible to get in touch with some company or some organization in Berlin, Germany, that is willing to accept plastic bottles from Lagos here in Nigeria. How do we ensure that the plastic bottles in Lagos, made in Lagos, are made of like the same materials, or at least materials that are acceptable for recycling by this organization in Berlin, Germany? So it's like you've got Nigeria, here you've got Africa, you've got Europe somewhere here, you've got Germany somewhere around here. We're taking plastics from here to here. And we're thinking, okay, the bottles made here might not exactly conform to what is accepted for recycling here in Berlin. How do we figure this out? So there's still a number of complications. There are legal complications, there are sanitary complications, there are like chemical composition complications. So of course there's still a number of things to figure out and think about. But I guess we'll see how things go. And then, of course, there'll be updates. There'll be updates on how things progress with this endeavor. But I hope whoever's watching, I hope you enjoyed watching this. I hope you learned something, and I hope this gives you something to think about later. Thank you very, very much.